Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the late one in review with yours truly, Sylbourne Sidiel. I want to thank you so much for this for this beautiful day, and thank you for coming on. And of course, when you come on, what you do is to like and share, and don't dislike, and of course, play a part in this whole show, which is in review, where we look at some of the top news and exciting news. Today is the 27th of August, 2020. We're making our way down to 2021. I know many people are saying we can't wait for 2021 to come because 2020 is crazy, you know. But ladies and gentlemen, I have some news for you. We're still in 2020, and we're going to make the use of 2020. We're going to leave 2020 with a bang. You know, we're going to hit COVID in its face. COVID is a terrorist. You know, I mean, I want to speak about that today. A terrorist. You don't negotiate with terrorists or anything like that, you know. But anyway, before we go any further, I want to just thank you so much for coming on and hope that you are one, staying alert. Two, control the virus. And three, saving lives. Because if you remember during the time when they had the whole terrorism thing with Northern Ireland with bombs in the UK, one thing they said is be alert. If you see any bags or anything there, what you need to do is to let someone know. And it's the same thing which is happening. We did not change our way of life, but we were vigilant. And that's what is happening now also with COVID. We've got to be vigilant. But without further ado, I'm going to bring on my guest tonight for the show. And let me, and they're just going to come up in a bang. You're just going to see they just pop up on the screens so fast. I don't know what's happening. Boom. Shakalaka bam. that was magic, wasn't it? That was magic.
Super.
Well, let me just say, KEISHA, Alan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. So happy to be here again.
You don't sound happy. Can you start it again? KEISHA Allen, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well still. I'm so happy to be here.
Fantastic. That's the way it should be. You got to get some spunk, some pie, you know I'm trying to say.
I'm building up.
KEIMA, see, I'm getting it right this week. I mentioned KEISHA, I mentioned KEIMA. KEIMA, how is it? How are you today?
I'm doing great today. I think Thursday, yesterday was Wednesday being one of the last days of Richie's eating out. I believe Monday would be the last day. So I think a lot of people are enjoying that, going out with their friends and family. So it's been a treat, I suppose, this week.
Actually, I understand it might be going over to September. David
that would be David, that would be very, very good because it's quite popular with the restaurants. So it would be good if that happens.
And talking about David is here in the form of James Singleton. James.
Yes. Hello. Thank you for having me. I feel great. I am so happy to be here. I definitely don't want to let you down on my enthusiasm.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, James Singleton is our I call him when you watch Big Brother and Little Brother, he's like the after show, and he's spiced up. But we say we want to get him on the front line today because we got some issues here. We're talking about don't lose your heritage or all those sort of things. So we say let's get the Englishman on the show. You know what I'm saying? Hear what he's You know, James,
exactly.
How is business? How is business, James? Post COVID. Well, you can't say post COVID. Post lockdown.
I don't know. I exist. That's about as much as I can say about that. I don't have to close my doors, so this is good. Right now, that will do, and then hopefully there'll be some more business to catch as the months go forward.
Yes. And ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that we try to do on this show is for you to give your views and to share your views as well. And as a result of that, we engage with you. So your engagement is important as people come on. Well, this is just a banter now until people come on. We try to complete at 10 o'clock. But we got a very interesting evening. And one of the first things we're going to talk about is COVID. COVID is still there. That geezer is still there. I'll give my monologue a bit about terrorism. And so, but KEISHA, how do you see, what's been the latest you can say about COVID? I mean, Dr. Burton is not here to give us the medical aspect, you know, but you are the closest to that, I think. KEISHA?
Sorry.
Yeah.
I do my best.
Yes.
Well, this
David
week,
is what David is
can you hear
watching.
me?
So don't let it down. Yes.
Right. So this week, I'll do my best, David, if you're watching. No, well,
Yeah.
this week, what we understand is that the government has made a significant U-turn regarding the wearing of masks at school, and school pupils at secondary schools in England will have to wear masks in school corridors and in lockdown areas. So that's one thing we know, and then it's another U-turn from the government. Whereas in Wales, slightly different approach, which is a decision by the Welsh government, is to allow schools in Wales to decide whether their pupils should wear a face covering. So the decision has been passed on to local governments or local authorities in Wales to decide whether they want their schools to be wearing face masks or not. So what you're seeing here is that different parts of the UK are making decisions based on what's in the best interest of school children.
Yes. That
Also, you
sorry.
may be aware there's an increased number of of um, of the pandemic, with the increased number of those actually having or getting the virus this week, in particularly in France. So that a good number of people within France actually have got the virus, and so that's affecting the decisions there in France, which means a number of departments in France have closed down, and changes have to be made in that area.
Mm.
And KEIMA, I believe you spoke earlier, before we actually got online, about what happened within Jamaica, or
Yeah. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Yeah. So in
Sorry.
Jamaica, I think an announcement was made today. I think Jamaica and is it Czech Republic as well, a few other countries that the government has announced that coming back from those countries, you'll have to quarantine for another 2 weeks. I suppose it's just to take precautions and for safety as well. Yeah. But from my view, there's quite a lot going on in terms of COVID. I think a lot of people are saying that the mixed messages that they're still getting, they don't know what, in terms of the numbers of people they could invite to their homes, or whether they should be able to go out, how many people they could go out and hang out with, that sort of thing. So there's a bit of confusion as well as to terms of what they're supposed to do. I mean, again, we mentioned about the U-turn and the education. That's really a big thing. I mean, it's been debated heavily this week. The issue around that in particular is students are meant to be going back to school next week. I know the unions were pretty much pressing the teachers in particular, head teachers, to make a decisions as to whether students should be wearing masks or not. Of course, that is something the teachers didn't want to take on, because of course it's in their view is a safety and also a health matter, and they needed the guidelines from the government to do that. So now the government has made a U-turn this week, and the reason why it's a U-turn is because, of course, there wasn't much guidance before, and we had Nicola Sturgeon, who actually came out ahead of this government this week and actually make the announcement that students up in Scotland will be have to wear the mask. So people are saying, of course, that's another U-turn from the government. But of course, that comes as a backdrop of what happened the last couple of weeks, of course, with the A levels results, and obviously the U-turn again on the algorithms from that. And so the government, in my view, is again looking a bit wobbly again this week. So there's a lot of twists and turns when it comes to COVID.
James, thanks, KEISHA. James, do you think that some of these U-turn is because the government is actually becoming more knowledgeable? Because before there was a lot of touch and go, but they're becoming a bit more knowledgeable of COVID and how it operates, and that is why now they're able to somewhat make some more decisions, make U-turn without worrying about any backlash.
Maybe. My opinion is a little bit more scathing of teachers and head teachers and these bodies, because it seems to me like, do we really want to turn into a nation where we cannot make a decision until the government make it for us? Or can these people who are supposed to be teaching the future of our nation not make a decision like, well, you have to wear masks everywhere else, and for our safety and yours, you're going to wear masks here as well, or whatever the decision is. I don't really see why it has to be a government decision. And so it could appear that the government is wobbly. It could appear that they are showing wisdom and listening to what people want, or it could just be that society needs to stop having the decision made for them by the government. That's my personal opinion about it. Is, do I need Boris to tell me whether or not it's okay?
Well, I think the teachers, particular head teachers, are in a very, very difficult situation because they've got to balance the communication and the messaging between, of course, their teachers, their students, and of course parents, and then you get in the feedback as well from government. And so they need to balance all of those challenges, and all of those areas have different expectations, particularly when you have teachers. Some of them might be have underlying issues as well. Teachers, the head teachers responsible for those, and then they need to be very much mindful if you're going to have students coming back. If they were to have one of two of them have the virus, it could implicate, or one of the teachers might be able to get it as well. So these are things that, of course, I can understand they cannot take very lightly, because the implication of that, and you as the head teacher, you are, of course, like the CEO of the school, and you have to ultimately have to take the guidelines, and that message has to be clear and coherent and come from the government. Of course, that's why there had been such a number of pushback from the unions, in particularly, to make sure the government have some clear messages and consistent as well.
Yeah. If I can put some.
Well, that was my point. If you don't, sorry,
carry on, James.
One more thing. I apologize. But that's exactly the point. The government have issued the guidance: wear a mask. It's been issued, and if the teacher of the school can't further that message by saying, "Well, we want to protect the health of our students and our teachers," everybody wears a mask. You know, it's not a tough decision to make from that viewpoint, because it's simple. The government said, you know, try and stay away from each other, try and keep some distance, and wear a mask.
Yeah, James, I want to stop you right there.
Yes, but we do have to take.
Just 1 second. There's a technical thing. KEIMA, KEISHA, are you hearing something with James' mic, or is it mine?
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's my mic. That's why I keep going. I keep hearing something in mine.
Okay, I don't know if it's James' mic or so. KEIMA, KEISHA, carry on. Sorry, carry on, KEISHA. Yeah.
Yes, I think I'm more concerned that there's so many messages happening within the UK. So you have Scotland with one giving one direction, and Wales another, and then obviously England. When it comes to our children, I think there should be a more consistent messaging, and we're just not getting that at the moment. And I believe that the government should give clear guidance to schools as to or how children should be monitored and during these times, because, you know, if anything is to go wrong, worst case scenario, there's another outbreak, somebody's going to have to take responsibility. And to me, I think we're just passing on responsibility to the head teachers. And that should not be. I think there needs to be clear guidance as to our schools within the UK should be doing this, this, and this, and be consistent with the approach. I'm actually very concerned also about the sudden U-turn. So again, the latest news is that you have to wear, or at least children has to wear a mask within corridors or communal areas, but obviously not in classroom. That kind of sound inconsistent to me, because at the end of the day, they're likely to catch the virus. Yeah, you see what I mean. So if the person actually cover their face in the communal area, doesn't mean that they're not affected, and it will affect the classroom. So I think there needs to be a more consistent approach, and we're just not getting that at the moment from the government.
I just thinking about it for a second. It is really a testing time when it comes on to COVID, whereby it seems like there's no right and there's no wrong way to deal with this, except being alert. And I know it sounds like a rhetoric, being alert, control the virus and save their lives. Because upon that directive, which was talked about with Jamaica, I was reading something a while ago, and it said UK considers imposing quarantine conditions when a country's rate of infection exceeds 20 cases per 100,000 people over 7 days. And if we go to Jamaica now, what is saying that it added that Jamaica's 7-day rate rose from 4.3 on August the 20th to 20.8 on Thursday, equating to a 382% increase. So we're seeing now, like, Jamaica now is starting like when we were starting in the UK here. and every day you're hearing because Usain Bolt contracted COVID, and it's like, and all the work which has been done before by the government seem like it is going to, it is not. Things are getting bad because of the recent elections. What I'm actually saying right there is that, well, can you really control COVID?
But that's the thing.
Yeah, go on. Sorry, go on, please. You're saying, yeah.
No, I was just saying we're going to have to learn to live with the virus.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to have to get used to the idea that we're going to have to walk with hand sanitizers everywhere we go. We're going to have to walk with masks everywhere we go. We're going to have to be mindful of our distance and 2 meters away from other individuals. We're going to have to do these things in order for us to get on with our lives. I mean, the WHO actually did mention that there's no end in sight in terms of when the COVID is going to come to an end. So really, realistically, for an economic purposes as well, we need to be able to rebuild our economies. And the only how we can do that is if we could get back out there. If we keep shutting down everything as a result of COVID, we will not be able to get back on our feet. And I think we need to instill some sort of level of confidence in being able to protect ourselves when we go out, and be very, very mindful of our distance with other individuals.
But at the same time, there seems to be some light at the end of the tunnel, because what they're talking about is that companies are still hiring in the UK during coronavirus crisis. COVID-19 has devastated business across the UK, but yet at the same time, companies are hiring.
Yes. So for me, I mean, it's very positive, and I think there's a bit of a green shoot coming through, which I like to refer to as very very positive news, if you want to put it that way, because I mean, we've heard so much of the doom and gloom for the last couple of weeks, particularly with the number of job losses. I think again we've had Gatwick, who has announced over 600 job losses, and Pret as well today announced as well job losses. But I think there are a number of businesses out there who are recruiting individuals as well. I mean, particularly security business, manufacturing, hygiene business, delivery. So there are a number of organizations who are really, really looking to recruit. Amazon, we know about as well, who are recruiting. So I think there is we need to, in the midst of all the doom and gloom, there are some green light, if you want to put it there.
Yes. James, what do you talk about it? I mean, are you seeing some? I know, James, you got a very serious position there where you say you got to live with this thing. You can't be like nannies to the state. Or I've been in a nanny state.
Yeah, nobody wants to live in a nanny state. Not really. All of this, and I apologise, I missed a little bit of what was being said because I had a problem with the headphones, and then I had a problem with some static, and it's just problemsville over here. I must have said something about the government, clearly. So, but yeah, I've given my opinions on this, you know, in the past, and a little bit like for example, my view then with the school, you know, the head teacher needs to take responsibility. I mean, some of the things that KEISHA said, I absolutely agree with. There's a lot of complicated situations around it. Making everybody wear a mask, I don't think is that complicated. Just like I, as a business owner, it should be my responsibility to make sure everybody wears a mask in here, you know, and the consistency, again, as KEISHA said, you know, I think we have some different views on some things, but the consistency is so very, very important, because how can you get anybody to act the same? How can I look after your health and well-being when somebody else is not looking after my health and well-being, and so on and so forth? And I don't understand why there needs to be so many different rules all over the place. Surely it's a virus is contracted such, so we protect ourselves. And
James?
did you get that?
We slightly got a slight little delay, but say it again, James.
I don't know how far you heard.
No,
I was basically talking.
Yeah, we heard most of everything till the last bit there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so just saying, how on earth can we all behave consistently if we have inconsistent messages? The thing I don't understand about the inconsistency is why is it not simply the same message for everybody, which is really my point before with the schools. If there are people sharing a space, whether it's the hallway or the classroom, like KEISHA said, for example, just wear a mask. Masks everywhere for everybody, and that's it. And there's no inconsistency. And then everybody can feel, those people that are worried can feel they are being protected. Those of us that are not worried, well, okay, you might not like wearing a mask, but it's not that important. It's easier for me to wear a mask than it is for somebody else to be in fear for their life.
Yeah. Well, my view in wrapping up this particular section is that we have to treat COVID as a terrorist. Yes.
Yeah.
And we don't negotiate with terrorists.
No.
The Americans always say the American people will resolve. We will not negotiate. And the UK has followed that same process with the bulldog spirit. We do not negotiate with terrorists. So therefore, when you have terrorism and you got bombs and everything going around, the UK did not stop. They did not stop going through. What they are saying is stay alert. It's the same thing. Stay alert. Look around. If you see any bags or anything out there, let the authorities know. But you've got to go on. As far as I'm concerned, even in Jamaica with the elections, when people are saying, should the election go ahead or not? The question was, we don't know where COVID is. Therefore, if we do not have the election now, who says it's going to be better the next 6 months' time? So it is better to do it now. Life has got to go on. But what we do, we cover ourselves, we cover our mouth, we wear these masks, we social distance, we just be wise. You know, as individuals, we are leaders for our families. So we've got to be careful. And it got to go on. That's my view anyhow. It's a terrorist. Treat like a terrorist. Don't smile up with it.
I agree.
Well, listen,
I agree.
talking about that, there's been something which I have to talk about in regards to the United States of America with Jacob Blake, the shooting in the USA. And my thing is, you have all seen the video. Many people have seen the video. We don't have to talk about the video. But the key thing is, when will cops stop and just shoot? When they stop shooting to kill? I guess what I'm saying. You know, I don't know if anyone has seen the video. KEIMA or KEISHA, if you want to lead on this, what's your take about what I'm after the advent of George?
I've seen the video. I've seen the video, and it's very, very, very heartbreaking. And you rightly mentioned George Floyd as well. A couple months ago, we witnessed again what had happened to George Floyd, and then we're actually at the same place again with Jacob Blake. And obviously, this particular individual was shot several times, about 7 times in his back, and now he's left paralyzed from his waist down. Now, this is a person who had, family members. I understand there were children inside the car, and he was walking towards the car. As soon as he opened the door, that's where he was shot. I am very much concerned that police officers in America aren't really learning from the past, and they're not learning from what is actually has happened. They don't understand the reason for the several protests across the U.S. cities, various states. It just seems as if there is a continual perpetuation of the same problem arising out of America, and it is actually affecting the world. It's a global issue. Everyone now suddenly become concerned about what's happening there. There is a civil unrest of civil disobedience also going on in America at the moment, because people are trying to, sound the alarm bell that there a lot of Black men are dying by the hands of the police officers. I'm just concerned that there is, I don't want to say trigger happy, but I suppose it's a trigger happy approach where you see a Black person, a Black male figure in particular, and you suddenly feel that you should actually go after your arm or your weapon to put this person in a position that they can that actually to the ground. And that is just not good enough. There has to be another way by which you could train officers to actually reprimand or restrain an individual or arrest the individual without actually having to go to such extreme measures where they actually risk their life is actually put at risk. I mean, I don't really hear stories of that. I know there's 2 incidents, for example, in the UK, and I'd like to think that the UK is not at the same place where America is. But I know I could only recall 2 incidences in the UK where police officer shot an individual that actually made made it in the media very popular. And again, those were one was a black person, and I think the other one was a Brazilian person. There is so I don't understand if there is there's an argument clearly that this is a these are racialized incidents. There's another argument, I think, in particular, that is actually police officers need to be properly trained to deal with these issues. That is what I think the fundamental problem is. But what it is at the moment, and what is very concerning, it is causing an uprising in America, and we've seen it happen with George Floyd, who actually lost his life. I believe at the end of this week, Saturday, there will be another march following Martin Luther King. So they're going to actually have a similar Martin Luther King march.
Al Sharpton march, yeah.
Al Sharpton's hosting it and leading on that, and so you're going to hear a lot more of this. A lot of these feelings of strong feelings about what's happening, and there's a cry.
Yeah. Okay. I want to get the other person's Keisha, Keisha. But the question also is asked, and many people have been asking this question: why in America, whereby they all see how the police operate, they see where the police shoot to kill a lot, why was this gentleman actually walking towards his vehicle and going inside his vehicle when there are 2 police officers with guns drawn and going in the vehicle? Now, that doesn't nullify the fact that he got shot 8 times. And I've seen videos where mothers and parents teach their children and their boys that they want them to come back home. And by coming back home, they say, these are the things. If a cop stop you, you just you put your hands up, wait, they told them the law and everything. Don't move, just keep your hands up in the air. Don't make any movement, just listen to them and blah, blah, blah. I want you to come home. KEIMA, think about that for a second. Is there something not fixing there in a way?
Well, I hear that argument, but I also hear the other argument where we've had individuals who actually done exactly what the cops or the police asked for, and still their lives still end their lives, and so I think the responsibility ultimately has to be with the police officer. You are meant to be trained to do a job which entails restraining someone, but your job shouldn't be shoot to kill. That's just not your job. Your job is to be able to restrain and detain somebody. And when you get to the point where you feel you need to shot somebody 7 times in the back, I find that is very willful and disregard for, somebody said disregard for human life. And that's what it is. Huge disregard. Because if you respect somebody as a human, you would not treat them like that. And I think that person, take the fact away that he is a police officer, he has no right to be in the police force. That is a criminal act. And to be honest with you, it's also the way the police department dealt with that, because he was put on leave afterwards. But when people say that right across the board, somebody like that shouldn't be put on leave. He should be arrested and detained and dealt with like any other criminal, because that's not that you don't need a full investigation to blatantly see what has happened there. And that is a disgrace, and that is why people go out and protest. But not only that, because people are tired. Because if we as individuals who could look at this and see, you wonder why is it police officers cannot see the same thing?
Yes. James, your take on it from your perspective. Always like
well,
yes.
I'll start where KEIMA ended, which was, why have these guys not been arrested? It's murder. You can't shoot somebody that many times in the back. I mean, the idea of I wasn't there. Any reason they want the police out, but to shoot him once is one thing. 7 times in a man's back, that's got to be murder. And then earlier we heard about they need training, and I think the trouble, in my opinion, again, I'm not an expert, but it seems to be that the training is the problem, because if you get a statistic that says for the sake of conversation, obviously I'm making this up, but you have a statistic that says you're 70% of black men carry a gun and 50% of them shoot policemen. If a policeman goes out having been trained that statistic consistently, he is going to be afraid for his own life by virtue of stopping a black man. Do you know what I mean? And that for me is where, if it's racism, it begins there. Because you'll get then a white policeman scared for his own life because he's been trained to fear for his life, being overzealous, killing a black man who definitely didn't deserve shooting 7 times. Now, well, you know, he's guilty of murder because the humanity aspects, training aside, surely you don't shoot somebody 7 times. It's just, I love people too much. I could hate you guts. I would not shoot you 7 times.
Yes. You see, what is winding up a lot of people is that following that, there's a guy, 17-year-old boy, young man, white guy, Caucasian, and he shot 2 protesters along the way. There's some discussions going around whether it was self-defense. But what was very interesting about that shooting is that after he shot the persons, he walked up towards the police vehicles and he put his hands up, and they didn't even bat an eye on him. I have my reasons at the same time. People are making the comparison saying that Blake was actually trying to break up a fight unharmed at that point and got shot 7 times in the back. This white guy shot 2 persons, killed them, and shot another person, shot off their arm, I believe. And yet at the same time, he was able to walk and go home or so, and they arrested him after. And they said, "Are you okay?" Other persons are actually saying, well, hang on, at the same time, in the night when these things are happening, a lot of people are out there protecting their business as well with guns. Because in America, if you saw recently, there was a lot of black men walking and parading with guns. People have a right to walk with guns in a certain way until after this check if they use it and how they use it. So is that comparison there fair at the same time? Or is it the height of white supremacy?
Well, it comes down to image. It comes down to perception of black people and perception of white people. And that's ultimately what it is. The police saw this white boy and assume that he must be an innocent person. You know, I mean, it's no way that a black guy who might be protecting his business that have a gun in his hand will be still walking around willy-nilly. It wouldn't have worked. So the same argument would have not worked for a black person. So the fact remaining is it's all about how black people and white people are viewed. And that comes back ultimately to the training, ultimately to the images and what the images that we are seeing every day on television. So we have to really sort of retrain our minds, undo some of the things that we have in, you know, we see of other people. And that, I think that's where it's ultimately need to start.
Yes. There have been KEISHA, I don't know if you've seen that. There have been some different fallout. LeBron James, different sporting events have been shut down, boycotted. The Japanese American tennis player, she also pulled out, and everybody's pulling out saying this has got to stop. Yeah, this has got to stop. KEISHA, is you there?
KEISHA's been silent.
Oh, KEISHA, you've been silent. Why were you silent, KEISHA? Hang on, I can't.
Sylbourne, trigger happy.
KEISHA,
That's the word.
KEISHA,
can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yes.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah. So I don't know what happened there. But what I'm saying still, people are really tired. They're really exhausted, and everybody, celebrities, sports persons, they are so tired and they want to do something. They really want to make a change. And if you hurt them in their pockets by actually saying, you know what, I'm not going to be participating in a sport activity and lose some funds, I'll do what I've got to do to draw attention to this issue. And that's all what's happening. But I really don't think, this protesting, you could protest as much as you like. I think, you can boycott, or as some of these politicians, sports persons are doing. You could do all this, but I think the fundamental problem that America has, and I'm just looking at it objectively, is the Constitution, the Second Amendment, Constitution, which is of course the right to bear arms. That is the fundamental issue that we have here, and unless America come to an agreement, and I say America, I mean American people come to say, let us put down, okay, the guns, because is it really necessary to in modern day society 2020 in a developed world? All right, and I know it's an argument that no one actually is prepared to listen to at the moment, but that is why you need a group of politicians to rise up and push back, because unless you have this conversation about actually redressing this particular Constitution, Second Amendment, there will always going to be a high number of Black people, Black men in particular, that's going to be gunned down, whether through gun crimes, as in black and black crime, or gun crime by the hands of the police. I mean, comparatively to the rest of the developed countries, where there's actually a lot of issues relating to policing as well, you don't have these high numbers of deaths. America has a high rate of deaths, not only in custodies, but obviously on the streets by Black men, and it's only because of they're actually using a firearm. So if you actually take away the firearm, then there's going to be a less likely amount of people that's going to die. And that's the reality. But I know it's actually one of an extreme view, but it's actually the only view. No matter what these people are doing in America, unless you have politicians who are bold enough and courageous enough to say, let us review and assess this Constitution, nothing is going to happen. Every year, a year and a year and a year again, we're going to have people coming towards our television screen crying about the death of an Black person by the hands of a police officer who just so happened to be trigger happy. That's what we're going to be hearing.
I'm putting my fingers up because I don't want to lose this point. I do believe that right now America is very toxic. Right now America has this thing with Trump and Biden, and it just divided so much. It's like there need to be a coming together to deal with these key fundamental issues. Don't know who is going to do it, who is going to bring it together. It's not going to be Trump. I don't think it's going to be Biden, but there's got to be some figure that come in and say, listen, let's sit down at this table and see how we can fix this thing, because it is just not happening. This was happening in Clinton. This was happening in Bush. This was happening in Obama. It's not like as if it has changed. They were still killing off Black men in America and Black people in America at this point.
They're not only Black men, and you can widen the scope with this gun issue.
I'm sorry?
What I'm saying, Sylbourne, is not just. I'm just saying you can widen the scope of this conversation when it comes to firearms in America. There's deaths actually in churches, deaths actually in school, children, a lot of children being killed under during Obama time. So there's a wider issue with America, and the problem I have with Trump is that he's leading a divisive government, and haven't taken the time to actually look at both sides of every issue. So at the moment, Trump has been funded by the NRA or the Gun Association in America, and fundamentally, and if you're being supported by a gun firearm lobbyist group, you would not have time, or you would not make time to listen to people to actually talk about gun reform. You just won't. It's not in your interest to do that. You have to support a particular group of people who are funded. That is the reality what we're dealing with. And what we need to have is a group of politicians in America rise up and say, you know what, we're not going to actually be bought out or sold out by people. We are going to actually look at the issues and try to drive change. And if you're going to drive change, you've got to have an independent and objective approach on certain things. And America cannot change unless the politicians are prepared to make that decision and do those things.
It's good what Maranta KB says. Even animal rights, let alone a human being, savage in this manner. Blatant disregard for Black lives. And we've got to call a spade in regard to this. I've got friends I know in the USA, sons starting to go to college, and they're worried. James, they're worried. They're worried that they might get a phone call that something not with them, because it can't just happen so easily. It just escalates from 0 to 100. They're literally worried. LeBron James, some people are saying he went OTT, but he said, we're worried. James, I mean, let's put that in a situation. Can you sort of understand sorry, I'm not putting you on the spot, but you know, you understand where they're coming from in the United States at this present moment.
I do. It's funny because I have a cousin in America who was in the army, loves guns, loves his guns. He's got guns everywhere. He goes out for a drive with a gun in his jacket, a gun by his knee, a gun under his seat. He's like Yosemite Sam, honestly. So I think, you know, I do understand what they're saying. The difficulty that they have there is, I think you've got people on both sides of the political divide in America who like guns, you know, because it's an interesting thing. The more I observe government, the more I realize that most human beings don't ever grow up. You know, all I see when I see American government or UK government is I see children in the playground squabbling about who's the captain of the team, and I started the game, or it's my ball, you know, and anything that curries favour and makes them be the favourite for a little bit, you know. And for me, there's not enough grown-ups in government. You know, we look to government for leadership, we look to government for many things, but if most of them are actually children in suits, what's the point in looking to them anyway? So I understand why Americans are extremely worried, because you can pop out, go to the equivalent of you nip into the co-op to get some milk for your cup of tea, and next thing you know, you've been shot dead, you know, by a policeman because you were holding a mobile phone. You know, it's crazy.
You're walking with Skittles, you know. It's
exactly.
But Sylbourne, there's a point I want to raise. Looking at Miranda's KB point, when she said even animals have rights, let alone human beings, and it just reminded me of the fox hunting ban. I remember there was previously there used to be so many campaigns around, you know, banning fox hunting, and it became like a you know, not just policy or people fighting to government, the divide between government, Labour Party, conservatism, arguing as a, you know, should it be banned, should it not be banned? And when it was passed, there was so much, you know, people excited that there's a growth, that there's so much change. And I'm saying to myself, I'm thinking, there are people, animal rights activists who fought for this campaign. Where are the activists who will fight to actually completely ban the use of guns in America, or firearms in America? Because at the end of the day, if human beings are treated even much better than animals should be, then why is it black males are being killed so often on the streets of America? Where is the outrage?
But can I just say, Keisha, put it in perspective at the same time, all these recent killings that has sparked the level of demonstration were by police who had the right to use guns at the same time. So it's, what we have not seen of recent is any wanton killing in schools, whereby you have young persons going to schools and shooting up. Somehow we have not seen much of that. But what we have seen is the use of guns by police officers who have the right to use guns. It is how they are using it. Some people will say it is a gun that kills, the weapon, but it is this person who is behind it at the same time. So there need to be a level of balancing towards that. But that is going to be for another time, because I want to make sure that we can capture another discussion, which is about the BBC Stereotype Black British comedy show, Famalam, and / the TV license. I sort of hit out at this recently when I saw the various previews of late and last week, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Jamaica said she was going to write. I won't describe the video and I won't play it or so to show any sort of promotion to it. I believe sometimes we promote these shows unknowingly, and it's a strategy which they've used, like with Tommy Hilfiger and all these things. We try to mess around and be in disregard. But do you think the BBC is stereotyping Jamaican and at this time? And do you think that Famalam is a bit disgusting, or is it comedy? KEIMA, let's go for KEIMA.
Well, I watched it and I found it distasteful. I didn't like it. I think it was outdated. It didn't appeal to me. But I on reflection, looking at it, I thought to myself, well, somebody who wrote the script, and you have researchers, I could only imagine you have Black individuals who are in positions within the BBC would have signed it off and said that it was okay to be produced. It to me, it lacked any depth and any sort of serious research, and I don't particularly think that it reflecting a vast majority of people. But then the BBC is a very big corporation. There's lots of levels of checks and balance before anything goes out, and they would have deemed the show to be appropriate before it goes out. And of course, we have June Sabha, which I understand is the head of diversity there, and I would think this show would have passed through on her desk. She would have looked at it, or her team would have looked at it before it goes out. So although I want to lay some level of blame on the BBC to some extent, because they would be responsible for the funding of it, behind the creative side of it, I think there are other individuals who would have been, who also would have been very much involved in it, and employed by the BBC, who thinks that it was appropriate.
The BBC has been criticized after it released a clip from the new series. That's what it says. The comedy show Family, whose third season, I didn't know it had seasons, its third season, let me just say, it's been going on a while, is being promoted ahead of its broadcast on BBC 3 Sunday, which is gone, had its latest sketch reveal on Twitter. In the clip titled Jamaican Countdown, critics say misogynistic language is used towards one character who selects the vowel, consonants, or the contestant. She's later shown being humped by the presenter. They didn't say this, but it also shows a part of the male's anatomy drop down, filling the stereotype, which you normally would see in the Caribbean, that big men have XYZ. It also suggests men of African Caribbean descent are endowed with large, whatever it said. When you hear the countdown jump, it letters number and Hellifer C, boom. The singer behind a mock theme turns it. James, did you enjoy it?
I have to admit, I watched it. You posted your comment, and I saw that, so I went to have a look at what is it. Is it a load of white men, or what is it? So I did find some of it a little bit amusing, I have to say, but it doesn't. None of it hits home with me. I've got no historical reason to be particularly offended. I do think it lacks imagination, though. It's like, I want my own TV show. If that's all it takes to make a comedy TV show, you should stick a few cameras around my salon. I will have you creased up laughing all day long, especially when I'm using stereotypical jokes about, as a Manchester United fan, I'll talk about Liverpool fans. I love it. It's one of my favourite hobby horses. Yeah. Well, that's about the extent of the quality of it. It's, as for a dark side of it, I do think it is a shame to see, you're trying to make all this headway as a race, black people being treated more equally. It's a decades, centuries-long struggle. And at a time when it seems to be coming to a head a little bit, a group of black British comedians decide to make a load of sketches stereotyping everything that their fellows are complaining about and saying, don't you stereotype us, because, and the last thing I'll say, and it ties right in with this, when Romelu Lukaku played at Manchester United, we made up a song and it was really all complimentary, but it alluded to him being well equipped, let's say, and we were blasted for it because it's racist as a stereotype, so we stopped it. And yet here you have black people doing the same thing for a few cheap laughs and to keep themselves on the TV.
Well, David is here. David Burton, good evening all. He just came in a while ago. I'm saying, David, as you can see, I've been transformed and changed into James Singleton.
Yeah, we've upgraded you to a hairdresser.
Good point. But let me, before we go there, let's look at a commercial break. KEISHA, let me just pull you back a second. Let's go to a commercial break and show you what happened when I tried to call David on the phone. When I tried to call David on the phone, this is what happened.
Siri, calling David Burton.
Sorry, I don't have a phone number for David Burton. Who would you like to call?
David Burton.
Sorry, I don't have a phone number for David Burton. Who would you like to call?
Siri, can I call Mr. David Burton?
Sorry, I can only call one person at a time. Who would you like to call?
Siri, can I call Dr. David Burton?
Calling Dr. David Burton.
Oh, so that's how you do it. I see. Calling Dr. David Burton. Interesting.
Okay, what you've seen right there is how posh Dr. David Burton is when it comes on to Siri, and actually, you have to address him as, even Siri says you have to address David Burton as Dr. David Burton. I just wanted to put that one in because I was just calling him and he just won't answer. And at one point, Siri was saying, I can't talk to two persons at the same time, and so I said, Dr. David Burton, So I don't know if what happened today, why David is not here. I don't know, he's laughing. But I don't know if you guys, but Siri is on top of it, man. You got to call him, you got to give the man due respect, Dr. David Burton. Yes. Going back to that point now. Who didn't speak? KEIMA? Who didn't speak
KEISHA.
on that?
KEISHA.
KEISHA, yeah. KEISHA, what's your take on the Famalam?
Yeah, I agree completely with James. I think the whole sketch, based on what I saw anyways, it's really outdated. One of the actors commented that what they were trying to do is to poke fun on truths and stereotypes. But I just felt that, as Keima said, I just felt so distasteful. It's just not something settling for me. And I'm just surprised that in this day and age, that these are the type of talent or product or materials that's being released through the media, through the BBC. So one can argue, because I've seen comments, that it's just satire, it's comedy, but I just don't know if it has a place for in the society at this stage. We've been, as James said, we've been through so much as the Black community trying to make change, and this is what we could come up with at this time. I really don't think is helpful. In terms of what Keima said, just quickly, of course, there's Miranda Wayland and June Sarpong, both at BBC. All of that, those materials would have gone through to them. They obviously, Black people have had a high-profile position within BBC. I'm actually surprised that they've actually signed up. There would have been a process. You would have had a project team, I suppose, a committee. All that has to be signed off through that, and we're still where we are with this project. It's a shame, really.
It's a shame.
This is what they produced in the end.
I think at the same time, and of recent days, I've been seeing a lot of Black programs, and the BBC is funding Black persons to get into the media business. But I think somehow they're being misguided in certain ways, thinking just because you got a Black person on the program or on the BBC, that is ticking the box, we are diverse. I tell you what I think of. And I go all the way back into 1897 with Belgian King Leopold, when he brought 267 Congolese people to his country estate to display them in a mock African village, right? And I made a comparison there that isn't this of a similar nature, whereby Black people are on display, being laughed at, because those who are racist or whatever will say, hey, come on, man, this is fun, man, we're having fun, I think it's almost a similar nature. And I think it is time for a case for the economic boycott of the BBC through not paying your TV license, but through a legislative process. What do you think? Isn't it time? I've seen petitions about that as well.
Sylbourne,
yes.
There's people for years, many years, who have been campaigning for the cancellation of the TV license fee. So as far as I'm concerned, that's the BBC is a firm, just like the royal family is a firm, and they're institution planted in this country. And there's a reason for the TV license. Clearly, there's the BBC has a number of changes that has to be made. They've recruited a number of Black ethnic minorities to help mobilize those changes. Clearly, we're not seeing a lot of changes at this time, but actually they have made attempts to actually make these changes. But when it comes to the TV license itself, I think that's a separate matter, and there's a case for it. And for those of you who don't know, the reason for the TV license is also to fund the BBC World Services. So there are people in the developing world.
Come on, that's rubbish. I tell you why it's rubbish. I tell
It
you why.
is not rubbish. It is fact. It is fact. That's the reason that the people, and in Jamaica, for example, in the islands, in different parts of Africa, who the only news that they hear in the morning is BBC World Service. They have a case to actually have that type of service, and we are paying for that as our our charitable.
I'm supposed to be balanced here, but I'm going to be imbalanced at the same time as the host. Listen, guys, we are not happy with this program, and guess who is paying for it? You and me at the same time. So shouldn't there be a case for persons who do not want to partake in a particular program, or say, listen, I don't want to watch the BBC, I don't like it or whatever, why should I be subject to paying for the BBC? Secondly, let's look at this now. 2015, there was the case whereby people paid off slave traders who when slavery was abolished, they took away their slaves, and therefore they had to be paid off. In 2015, they were paid off by taxpayers. Who were the taxpayers at that time? You and me, and James, KEIMA, KEISHA, David. I was in this country. So I actually paid off the money for slave traders who had my ancestors in slavery, in chains. Think about that for a second. And at the same time, we are seeing something similar with the BBC, whereby people are not happy with the programs. People find it distasteful, and yet at the same time, hey, we're all paying for it. We are also complicit unless we do something about it, as far as I'm concerned. Listen, the BBC was made for the BBC at that point in years ago for a particular purpose. Well, I'm going to put the question up. Is the British people, should there be changes in history? You see, the statues are being torn down. Isn't that of a similar nature? I'm just putting it there. Do you want to pay for something which you're not happy about? James, will you pay for it, James? Sorry, go. No. Who's going to shout?
Ladies first.
Ladies first.
No,
ladies first.
I was going to say to Sylbourne, it's not as straightforward as we like. I think most of us, particularly myself, we particularly don't really like to pay the fee. I would rather not pay. I've got Netflix, I've got Sky News, I've got everything else that I want, and I'd rather not pay for the TV license. But it's more complex than that. I think one of the things the BBC is seeing as a soft power around the world, it's a way that we begin to be able to project ourselves as to have a leading voice. And Keisha mentioned about the British BBC service, which is used around the world. Africa, everybody wake up in the morning and hear it. We are able to communicate the news, and it's the news told by the British. So it's part of our soft power that we get to influence around the world. So there's no way that we'll be able to put that to Parliament and that's going to be retracted. That's one of the big things as well. There's a lot of people as well.
Turn on their phones in the morning. They turn on their phone, social media.
We might do that. We might do that here in the UK. But remember, the United Kingdom see themselves, and we still see ourselves, as very influential across the world. And the BBC and help us to maintain our status around the world. And that is very, very important when it comes to trade, negotiation, influence. And so we, our politicians, we look at that and think to ourselves, we take away the BBC World Service, what do we have left? But people look to us and think, fantastic, we're doing fantastically well. So the way I see it, the BBC has such huge influence, it will be difficult to navigate away from that.
James, I hold my tongue, James.
Yeah. Okay, so firstly, with regards to where did he get the money from, because KEISHA obviously mentioned that we need the money to have the journalists and what have you in different parts of the world. Why would selling advertising space not pay for that? Firstly, I do enjoy not watching adverts, but who watches adverts anymore? Because as you just said, Netflix, Amazon, no one watches adverts. Even if you've got Sky, you just have the box recording it. You go and make a cup of tea, you come back in and you press play right at the point you wanted to see it from. But my other thing I wanted to say was for you, Sylbourne, a friend of mine had a huge problem with his TV licensing. He got very frustrated with them. So he called them up and asked them, what do I need to do to not pay a TV license? And he said, it's very simple. Untune your set so that it doesn't pick up a BBC channel, and that's it. So you don't have to pay for a TV license. It's not a law, you know. And then the last thing was, you know, if we wanted to use it as power or leverage in some way, seeing as it's a license for the UK, why not charge people who want to stream shows into our country, charge them the fee for broadcasting here because they want to sell me their products, or they want to sell me Pampers during the break of Coronation Street. I obviously don't watch Coronation Street, but you know what I mean. And charge them for it. I don't know. There's a million and one ways to get around the TV license, but I think it's archaic the way that we're paying for it.
And I think, and I totally agree with you, but the problem is you are suggesting a commercial approach, and the commercial approach means that you're taking it out of the government hands. So you're taking away, it's going to be independent from the government and the influence of the government. And, you know, again, it goes back to my point about soft power. Whichever party is in government, you need to be able to communicate whatever message you want to communicate. At the moment, you see a lot of criticism from the right, who seems to think that the BBC is too left. From time to time, you get that back and forth because of the message that's coming out from the BBC. So it's a very political organization, and to make it commercial is not going to work. It's not going to work for the status quo. It's not going to work for what we stand for in our political world, if you want to put it that way.
Well, maybe. But I would say one last thing, which is if we can't trust the government to give us a consistent message about whether or not we should wear a paper mask, then why on earth would we trust them with a global voice of the BBC?
I rest my case. I rest my case right there. And the topic which I just dropped on right there for 2 minutes is Boris Johnson says, stop being embarrassed about Britain's history of slavery. And I guess there's this big talk about the song Land of Hope and Glory could face the axe altogether and rule Britannia. I mean, rule Britannia? England shall never be slaves again? Is there a case for that? Or is it that at the end of the day, it is just ripping England to shreds? The core aspect. James, do you feel like you're being ripped apart? Your history is being taken away? Or you can see...
Yes and no, because on that song, I don't know all the words. I just know rule Britannia, Britannia rules the ways, Britain never, never, never shall be slaves. That was all I knew. And I read through it, and it's a song about freedom, and it has nothing to do with anything bad about this country at all. It just seems like, oh, if it's old and it's English, it is bad, therefore we destroy it, because England in the past was universally bad and evil and wicked. And it's not entirely true to say that England was any more wicked than anywhere else. The world was far more barbaric 200 years ago. You know.
And what Boris Johnson is saying is he's calling for an end to creating national embarrassment about our history after the BBC stripped the lyrics from a performance of Rule Britain due to their association with colonialism and slavery. Well, as far as I'm concerned, if you're going to do it all the way. You might as well say Britain doesn't exist anymore. Take it away.
Well, one of the organizers said because of COVID and there was so much singing going on and all that lot, it was only for this year that there was no lyrics, and then next year the lyrics return and it's never going to be taken off the agenda.
Yeah, well, that was at the backdrop of it after the criticism comes out. But for me, I take a different view. I take the view where, of course, the song was written at the time where at the height of British involvement in slavery, Atlantic slave. And of course, to me, I find the lyrics very disturbing, and I don't think they should be played at all. I think, you know, as a nation, we need to come to terms with our past, and it's not something that we should say embarrassing. I think the Jews, for example, when you look at the past in Germany, it is their past, and, you know, Germany has to accept it. I don't understand why we in the United Kingdom, we cannot accept or part in the transatlantic slaves. We had people who were thrown over ships and people who were lashed and beaten and hanged as a result of that. And that song was written at that time, and it brings back, for some people might think, it's a bit of a conundrum, because some people see it as James mentioned, as a song about freedom, but other people see it in a different perspective. And I think we need to embrace that and look at it and not isolate some people because they've got that view.
Yeah.
Well, the lyrics don't say any of that, though. There's nothing about being slave traders in the lyrics. There's nothing related to slavery at all in the lyrics.
But the lyrics are quite clear.
No, but based on that logic, we should just erase everything from that time.
No, that's not the point. The point is we've got to look at the lyrics. I mean, you have to look at the time as the time that what we see. But the main part of the songs tell you about Britain rules the waves. That is what it says. And that is about the transatlantic slave.
Isn't that historical?
We didn't do it at the time, though. We didn't rule the waves.
It is historical, but we shouldn't be singing the song in such a triumphal. I mean, you had people who died in that slave trade. You shouldn't be singing it.
The song is not about that, though. This is what I don't understand. The song is of no way in relation to the slave trade, aside from the time in which it was written.
It was written, but that's the context that we're referring to. We might have
not
a different
everything of that time.
but that's the thing. There's a lot of songs, for example, that we sing today that was written at the time of slavery, that we look at it and we have a right to review all these songs, all the things, the statues, everything, and I think, okay, but this is not comfortable. And the way I see it, if it's not comfortable to some people, some section of society, I think we need to put our hands up and say, okay, it's not appropriate for some people. That's the way it is. I think that's how I would look at it.
Okay, but as a part of British heritage, it belongs here, and people have to learn to either get comfortable with it or accept the fact that they're always going to be uncomfortable with it, because why should my nation be altered beyond what I am used to because of something that happened generations ago? And with a song, in this case, this particular song is not a song lauding, approving of, or connected with slavery in any way, shape, or form. But of course, we should wipe it out because some people don't like it. I see things I don't like all the time. Should they all be wiped out? No.
But it's not as simplistic as I see things as the fact is, there's people, huge generations of people who suffered as a consequence. And you might not see it as something, James, that relates to you. But for me, for example, I could trace my history. So to me, it's still real. To me, it's still very, very real, still very fresh. I mean, it's easy for some people to distance themselves from it, but I can't distance myself from it. When you have a song written at that time, it reminds me, Britannia rules the waves. It reminds me of that. I don't want to be remembered.
You can't just correlate it by time. What is the song about? It is not about the thing that you're upset about, is my point. Do you see what I'm saying? If that song was about the very thing which you're upset about, I would understand. But the fact that it has a relation to ships, everything was done by ships in those days. So what do we do? Do we destroy all over the
It is celebrating. I'm coming 1 second. It is celebrating empire. It is celebrating empire, and by that alone, it's reference to slavery and colonialism.
Okay,
and so somebody like me,
can I just come in right there, because what I'm seeing actually is two sides of the coin. We're seeing whereby the British people, English people, feel like they're being ripped apart with their history, the core of them in a way. Those who are not and never supported slavery, and then at the same time, persons who are descendants of slavery feeling a bit that it's a bit rich for singing those songs when they actually came from that period of time when slavery was on. So when you talk about Britain ruled the waves, it is that period of time whereby they control and they were taking control. So therefore, persons are saying, hang on a second, that is during the time of slavery. I would suggest that we will need to maybe come back again on this particular topic with someone analyzing each verses, James. Each verses, because guess what? This is where it's going to go. You tear down the statue, okay? You tear down the songs, okay? You tear down everything that relates to the empire. So all the person with OBE, MB, and all those sort of things, they all got to go. Everything has got to go. You got to get rid of the Queen. You got to get rid of Buckingham Palace. I mean, listen, you got Oh my days! You got to care.
But then, of
Take the name. There's no more Britain. There's no more Britain.
No, of course. But then the other thing is, are we then also going to go back and trace back the heritage of all of the other people that were involved in the slave trade who were not white and who were not British?
We should.
You know, where
should.
does it end? Are we going to go back to Africa and destroy every cultural thing there? And the same in Jamaica? And, you know, where does it end?
No, we need, I think it's about time that Britain have a real open and honest conversation about their past. No, it has to be done. It's not what you teach at university, where you whitewash history and tell us a particular story, which is not true. I think now it's particularly in the light of Black Lives Matters, where people are beginning to say, you know what, we need to be told how history was, not by the conquerors, by people who actually served. Sorry?
Not a man or woman alive today who can guarantee you the truth about these things, and we can sit and have an open discussion about it. So we're quite wonderful.
But we both know some of the things that's been put out there is not the truth. We know that.
No.
And
my point is we need to be able to move past it, because you and I can sit and talk about it till the cows come home. It's not going to change it. And neither of us is going to know the truth.
We cannot move past it. We cannot move past it unless we have a frank and honest conversation about British history and British involvement in the colonial past and slavery and everything. Unless we do that, racism will not be resolved. And that's how I see it.
The thing is, that's not where racism comes from. I just want to say one thing on racism. Racism, you can look at all sides of this. It's going round in cycles. Right, but the same thing, the anti-racism movements are only going round in cycles. These things have not been effective.
Okay,
they really haven't.
That's a wider conversation, James.
Yeah. Anyway, leave my song alone.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Now listen, I want to finish off with this point, but listen, we've got to come back on this particular point, because I believe it is a feisty but a very profound and a key topical. I think there needs to be a dissection of the song, but as I said a while ago, at the rate of how things are going, we're going to be sitting in a new country which is called Newbie. I don't know, something else. You don't want me to call Britain. Because if we continue at this rate, James, Britain, the name Britain is going to go, man.
I would wipe the whole thing out and just leave Manchester. I'd be more than happy with that.
You know what? Start
all right. Somebody say
it's not Britain, it's Great Britain. That is it.
Well,
Great Britain.
It's Manchester land.
Hang on, Keisha didn't say anything. Keisha just said fine.
Keisha just sit out of this debate.
I just allow them. I just got out of it. Yes.
Yeah. Is it somebody say?
I don't know. It's an interesting one. I mean, it's based on people's interpretation and all the connotation in relation to the song itself, and people could interpret it a different way. You know, you could interpret "rule the waves" literally or metaphorically, but that's all it comes down to. But I do take both James and KEIMA point on that. Yeah. Well, my issue is, are you hearing me, by the way?
There's a new name for Britain. David likes to name things, so David has named Britain. But listen, the Jamaican election is going on, and tonight I'm going to go straight to bed after this, because I'm going to wake up at 3:00 in the morning to listen to the Minister of Finance against the opposition leader. It's a very interesting election which is happening over there. I don't know if you guys have been following it. There are questions as to the timing of it, because COVID is somewhat on the increase in Jamaica big time. A lot of people will be disenfranchised. That many are saying people are now in quarantine. People are now, doctors have COVID. Hospital, there's a Kingston Public Hospital, I believe, was on lockdown. Nurses having COVID. And the question is, how fair can the election be? And then the final debate will be this Saturday with the Prime Minister against the opposition leader, Peter Phillips. So it's going to be an interesting election, which is going to be next week, Saturday. Any views on that, KEIMA or KEISHA? You have been, James, you must have a view because I've knighted you honorary Jamaican, so you must have a view.
I'm just beginning to find my feet. I'm just beginning to learn. I'm like a baby, you know. I'm walking around, falling down, bumping my head off the corners of tables, and so on. So I don't even know who should be in charge. I asked you that question via. I put it up as a comment on Facebook. You know, who should be in charge? I'm like your child in all this. You need to tell me who I should want.
If I say that, then people are going to say, right, oh, Sylbourne, you're a JLP or you're a PNP. Now we know what your political colors is. Jamaica is very is very diverse in politics. And very
I'll take the lead from these two very amazing women then.
Okay, KEISHA, any last word on the Jamaican election?
Well, I think personally, I just think
the only question I have is around.
Go on, KEISHA.
Sorry, go on.
I think we're both going to say this in KEIMA. I think I was going to say whether the election is there conversation being had whether the election should go on or be delayed. And personally, I think that it should continue in spite of what is happening on the ground regarding the COVID pandemic increase. I think that we just need to be mindful, and obviously just keep reminding people that when they go out to vote, which is of course is their democratic right, and therefore they should exercise it, and we should continue to tell people that they should go and vote, but therefore they need to wear the mask. It's quite interesting if the government in Jamaica hadn't put in place other alternative rather than having to go to the the booth to actually vote. I don't know if they could have tried another voting the electors to come out and get their votes done. But I actually whether it's here, whether it's in Jamaica or in America when that comes around.
Mm-hmm.
We're quite similar. I just think ultimately, I think everybody just needs to be safe going out with a mask. I mean, of course, we talked about the rise in terms of COVID in Jamaica earlier. So I think that's ultimately paramount. I think they should have hopefully a very peaceful elections. I mean, with all the dub plates and everything that's been going on, a lot of people are paying attention to what's going on there in Jamaica. So let the best party, if you want to put it, win. I've got my favorite. Of course, everybody knows I'm a Lisa fan, but that's because I just like Lisa. but then it's just ultimately, of course, I know the Jamaican population will choose the right party.
Okay. And James, any last word on Jamaica?
No, I just hope I've been following a few things that you guys have all been talking about in this regard over there. I can bogle. That's what I have to say about Jamaica. No, you know, a lot of interesting comments have been made, and just as a very culturally rich and fascinating place to me, I just want to see them start getting a foothold economically and leverage, you know, these people like Usain Bolts and, you know, very famous and admired people to really, you know, take advantage of all of this and start really doing better as a more independent nation, which even that was debated, wasn't it? Is even independent was one of your questions.
Yeah.
You know, so hopefully this is one of those steps in more black freedom, you know, freedom from the UK with regards to how their nation is run, and you know, economic freedom probably from America, because they seem to be the ones that have the economic strangleholds on most countries.
Yeah, well,
on a lot of countries.
Well, definitely tonight I'll be online, and maybe watching it at 3:00. And I found I've got the facility where you can watch it with me at the same time, you know, for persons who are up a little bit Jamaican. You guys will be fast asleep in your bed, snoring and everything like that. 3:00 in the morning, getting ready for the Queen, getting ready to work for the Queen. You know what I mean? The MB and the OB and all those other things, right, KEISHA? KEIMA, sorry.
Absolutely. You just have to carry on, isn't it? One day we'll see a change.
Yes, one day we'll see a change. Well, guys, listen, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for being with us on this lively discussion, lively debate. It shows that conversation and discussion are very key. As I said all the while, I don't go with the flow. We don't go with the flow. we look at things from a different perspective, and we'll touch on uncomfortable topics, like when we talk about Rule Britannia. James wants to keep ruling the Britannia. KEISHA is saying, KEIMA is saying, shut down everything, man. KEIMA wants to change the name of Britain to Brexit, as far as I'm concerned. Change everything, remove the Queen and all those sort of things at the rate of how she's talking. Is that correct? I don't know if I portrayed it very well there, KEIMA. And KEISHA today has just said, listen, guys, I'm out of this one. I don't want to be chastised or anything. You guys just go for it. And David, of course, is on the sideline laughing at us because he pulled a fast one because Siri only called him and then, of course, thank you for joining, and ladies and gentlemen, please like and share. Unfortunately, we didn't go Instagram tonight. There won't be an Instagram show because we're going to prepare for the Jamaica elections as well. But before I go, let me play this. I'm not going to play some of these jingles and these dub plate because I keep getting these infringement coming from YouTube, but I believe I got the rights to this one. Just 1 second. KEIMA, I'll just put you in there for a second. And here we go. If I can find it. In there.
The Jamaica Debates Commission presents the General Election Debates in association with Proven, Flow, Scotiabank, National Democratic Institute, Digicel, NCB, Anjam, UWI, JN Group, and Victoria Mutual Group. See the two major political parties debate national issues live August 27 and 29 at 9 p.m. Don't miss the General Election Debates presented by the Jamaica Debates Commission. Watch, listen, decide, vote.
You can't hear me? I can hear you. I can hear you.
I can hear
you. I can hear you. And if I can get back Miss KEISHA. Bingo. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so yes, that was a plug for the election. So you watch it tonight. It's going to be exciting. Who's going to stay up? Go to your bed right now and get 5 hours sleep, 3, 4 hours sleep. Okay. So have a good day, have a good weekend as well. And we're back again next week as well. And like and share and have a good one. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining the interview and on the late one with myself, KEIMA, KEISHA, and James. And with David, Dr. David on the sideline. Don't get it wrong. Doctor. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.